This is Professor Teodros Kiros, Professor of Philosophy at Berklee College of Music and at Harvard Summer School. As most of my viewers know, I'm the host and director of African Ascent International, which is supported by the Hutchins Center at Harvard University and, of course, my own college, Berklee College of Music. I'm quite lucky that my students at Berklee College of Music admire this work, which is a trilogy. It is my second novel, Cambridge Days, which will soon be followed by two more novels to finish the trilogy, which will respectively be called A Passionate Man, following this novel immediately, and then Darky, which will be the third novel that will finish the trilogy. So at the request of my admiring students at Berklee College of Music, they have been insisting that I do a reading, if not an audiobook of the entire work, at least excerpts from it. I readily complied because I love them and I respect them and I value their judgments. So here then, I respectively invite all my viewers upon listening to the excerpts to share it at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and every other part of social media. I must say thanks in advance. Here we go then. I'm not sure who suggested we go to the beach so late in the afternoon. The earth is on fire. Some would say the blazing tropical sun is in full bloom. I say everything feels and looks hot. It is supposed to be winter, when the rain comes and cools everything. There are hundreds of bodies at the beach today. I take up my spot on the faded wooden chair near the water. The brilliant turquoise of the Indian Ocean dances at my toes. Neil has folded his body onto a towel. Despite the gathering clouds, he's ready to begin his afternoon baking ritual. He'll face the sun from all directions. First, he'll confront it head-on. Then he'll turn left, and then to the right. He'll lay on his side, his back, his stomach, and then he'll move back to a sitting position and face the glaring without blinking his eyes. He never seems satisfied after he's cooked through. I tell him he has grown black enough. He has been in Tanzania with me now for 1 year, and I fear he'll grow cancer if he does not take greater care. He's too busy arranging all his belongings to note this warning today. Neil has placed everything he might need over the next hours within an arm's reach of any position he may take. The most important of these items today is Heidi's book, The Invisible Black Woman. He places this open near his shoulder. When Neil sun-bakes the backs of his arms from his stomach, he'll turn his neck, rest his cheek on one page of the open book, and read the other sideways. I think he has even perfected a way to turn the page without using his arms. Amazing. Neil has also placed his tepid, nearly empty cool drink bottle near the top of the towel. His unopened unscreened bottom at the foot and a pair of sunglasses on his knees. He will not use any of these things in the next hours. You're growing black, I say to him after he had moved to his stomach. He seems not to hear me. Neil's concentration is so focused on reading The Invisible Black Woman because he's making up for lost time. The book is the one thing spanning the 20 years that Heidi and Neil spent apart. She will be flying to Dar es Salaam in just 3 weeks now and returning here with Neil. I'm not sure they'll marry this time around, but I wonder. She's 50 years old now, and he's even older. Perhaps Neil's spurned proposal nearly 20 years ago in our old home in Cambridge turned him off to marriage. Or maybe they are too old to worry about that either. I clear my throat, and then when he looks up at me, I see that his eyes are glittering. The book may be true, but so it is, I say. Sunscreen in my hand. You're becoming baked nicely. His eyes gleam. But love will not stop you from burning. The sun doesn't get weaker at this time of day. Neil, it becomes stronger. I pass him the sunscreen. He fingers the tube of 50 plus UVB sun protection as though he took it from me by mistake. Neil seems to liken my gesture to being handed a tube of toothpaste right before eating a long-awaited meal. He sets the tube down, politely, beside him and goes back to his book. I try to look at his skin disapprovingly, but Neil is so proud. He thrusts out one olive-tanned arm without looking up as though to prove this point, and then he proceeds to admire it slowly, changing hue. He surveys me approvingly. My color is already a deep red brick, he says. I use protection too, I say, doffing off my straw hat and tapping my round sunglasses down to show him the sockets of my eyes, clear and unlined by the veiny red streaks that crisscross his. I pull the sunglass back up and adjust my hat. Neil just grins toothily at me, so I settle back into my chair, even if I know it momentarily. The cloud heads are gathered and looking fiercer by the second. Today there will be a big storm. It's written on the sky. Neil eases himself onto his back, pretending not to wince at the way his terry cloth towel rubs at his shaved skin. Round number 2. I think to myself, the sun does feel good, but it is unbearably hot and the air is dense as the storm approaches. A few more minutes of time before we'll have to get up. I left the water soothe my feet and savor the moment. I feel supremely content. For once, I don't remember I'm an ex-professor from Cambridge, that my home country of Tanzania is plagued by problems and that Neil and I must begin to plan the gala event of this season, the second-year anniversary of the school we opened. In this moment, I'm only aware that we live ready. We are two handsomely aging men, ready to live for as long as we're given time. Neil has fallen asleep and the storm is upon us. Swollen waves crash to the shore in a caravan of lines, escorted by thunder showers, threatening from what could be merely moments. The sky darkens, and the gentle sea breeze begins to whip itself into foam. The bubbles turn to a wild froth that sprays both and makes Neil a jolt upright and grope for his eyes. What have I been missing? He demands, as he gently brushes off the book he overturned into the sand. While sand sprays out over his knees, he sits up cross-legged, a hand on each kneecap, every sinew in his body alert, waiting anxiously. While everyone else around us begins moving in haste, Neil and I gather speed more slowly. We are weighed down by the most intense scent and heaving pregnant clouds. The heady scent of wet mangroves fill our noses. We can smell where the storm has been before it arrives at us. The mist cuts us first, and then the thunder rolls out wide to open the way for the rain. We hear it pound at the sand before we realize the storm is right on top of us. "Let's go, Nerere," Neil yelps. He's smiling, excited by the commotion. A young couple dash past, blankets thrown around their shoulders, cool drinks clinging into the cooler bag, shiny pink and silver crisp wrappers fluttering behind them like celestial butterflies. We're captured by the frenzy and follow suit to pack our meager things and move out towards some shelter. Haphazardly, we ran, laughing like children again, and tripping ourselves on the sand, covering space quickly. We moved toward the first ledge of trees, marketing the slow ascent into what the tourists call the foothills of the eastern coastal mountain range. We finally arrive at the trees just as the rain releases. We huddle like birds, separately but together, and we slant our eyes. The young palm fronds dip to catch the rain and, unable to hold it all at once, flatten themselves into balding, peeling stumps. The cashew trees and old baobabs slow the rain and create pockets of silence. But our own bodies pulse. Rain must feel marvelous, I think, entranced by the way it glistens, graceful in its suspension between sky and earth. I step out into the open and Neil pushes himself forward with his nose out first. He follows my back, craving the rain. It is too perfectly cool and fresh to worry about being rational. We are greedy for the water, aching for it to enter our pores, our mouths, even our noses, to free us even, albeit briefly, from the intense heat. What can we do but surrender ourselves? Neil and I give over our bodies, and in return the rain pours in. We cannot get enough and long for it to bombard us even harder. It doesn't last nearly long enough, not as long as we wanted it. After a brief respite, the sun reclaims domain and sets our faces aflame again. The earth is once again on fire. We find ourselves blinking into the glare, strangers in an involuntary blindness. When my eyes refocus, I don't see Neil anywhere. Found it, I hear from down on the beach, somewhat to my right, where the coastal grove has thinned out into a near small enclave of round rock, sage and sand. I peer through shaded hands, searching for Neil. There aren't many people on the beach now. Over here, Nerere, I have found us a great spot. It is the voice again, but I can't see the owner. I move toward the rocks, and as I near, a long red arm and high-flying purple towel flap into the air, as if they are dancing. It is Neil. I find myself slipping up and then down again on the rocks as I try to mount them. But they're still slick with vanishing rain. At the top, I look down to see Neil in the sand arranging his towel. I feel tall and free, though I know I could jump down easily if I tried. Great spot, isn't it? He says cheerfully, waving up at me. The rocks cast a shadow over him, and his burnt white skin looks a slightly darker shade of purple than his towel. Find a sit, Nerere. You don't even need a chair, the way the rocks are shaped. He smooths the edges of his towel in the motionless air and then begins to fold himself down again onto the dry sand. I'm going to stay down here in the shadow, if you don't mind, he calls up. I think the blisters might be coming back. I peer at his shoulders. Translucent little volcanoes filled with clear liquid have burst up under the cracked and peeling shell of his skin. Neil has so many mottled layers of skin, he will never become black. I chuckle to myself. Okay, I'll see you a bit later then, I say, and then turn back towards the ocean. The rock I stand atop is smooth and curved out like a belly on one side and bends in like an hourglass on the other. It is bone-colored. I see an indented notch on the side of one of the rocks across from me. It looks as though it could mirror the curvature of my back, and suddenly a burbling fatigue overtakes me. But a roving desire mounts in my blood as I maneuver myself into the chair of rock. I am in a mood for love. My hands itch, my feet sweat. I close my eyes in peace, thinking that I'm completely out of sight of anyone on the beach. Then I sense a movement on the other side of the rocks. I hear Neil. "Just look at you, sassy beauty," I hear, followed by a throaty whistle. "What a fine piece you are." I can hear the appreciation, can almost hear Neil's lips smacking. So he is in a mood for love too. Maybe Heidi's picture is on the back of the book. I think to myself, stifling a smile, settling deeper into the sand. It's warm, the rock cool. I long for sleep, but then I see the hop. My breath catches, and even if I had tried, I cannot move. She, it appears from behind the rocks, on short legs, her ruddy pink chest held high, her head cocked to one side. She walks like a princess, feeling good, basking in praise. I realize she's what Neil had been whistling at, the crest on her head. Up then into a plume, her long black and white tail swishes right, then left, bubbling as she walks past me with gem eyes. Her beak is so long and thin, like a hooked needle. I have heard about hopoi. She appears in much folklore from Egypt to India, but I didn't know she came south to Tanzania. I shake my head at the wonder of my country, and then suddenly too worn out to do anything else. I dare to sleep. But sleep doesn't come so easily. Adoa appears in front of me, radiating that rare smile. I think it's a smile that can penetrate a soul and glue a person to the power of beauty. My hands reach out, but her smile begins to fade the more I reach, until finally she relieves me by taking my elbow and steering me towards the door of her apartment. Through the doorways we go, on the short stairs, through the kitchen and towards the big burnt oak table. Many papers are spread out on its surface, and at first I think it's a chapter of her dissertation. I know that she's at the tail end of finishing her last brilliant chapter on the African biological self. She'll soon begin the laborious process of editing. She has less than 2 months until her dissertation defense is in July. But when Adwa pulls out her chair to sit, I realize the papers have nothing to do with her dissertation. And now I'll move you to the end of the novel. The African artist, with purpose and characteristic lucidity and accessibility, works on the projects of tragedy. The African artist must perform her task to be understood and to be followed by generations to come. Art in the African situation is an educator, a transformer, and a reporter. The artist must report what is and imagine what could be. The African artist cannot afford to be neither irrelevant or irresponsible. She must be relevant, lucid, responsible, and visionary. It was a short but powerful piece, accompanied by slides of African art that is being produced in the continent as an illustration of the present and a projection for the future. The audience consumed the slides with great interest and much appreciation. Several panels examined many other educational themes. Thus, the conference was closed with her paper. I invited her that evening for dinner at a local bar, after I knew that she was departing in just 1 week and may not have time for me beyond that evening. And as I was gravely mistaken about that, after that evening we met every day and every evening for the entire week. It was as if we wanted to stretch that week by using every second of it to 1 year and more, so that our hearts could justify what I had planned to do. Upon meeting her for the second time in less than a year, I had already made up my mind to lock my hands with her through an engagement ring which I dreamt she would accept. She said yes, and accepted my ring on a Saturday evening on her way to the US to wrap up her dissertation at Harvard and to return to Tanzania a year later. When she returned home, she opened her mailbox. She found a letter from Elias's mother, Rosa. She opened it immediately, and 2 lines later, she read that Elias had killed himself and declared his love for her with painstaking details of the ambiguity of his life and his bitterness about his 40 years on this earth. Her trip of joy was juxtaposed with the visit of pain, which is the theme of the human situation and the seriousness of existence. She immediately wrote her first letter to me and told me, among other things, about what she encountered on arriving home. She did not leave her apartment for 1 whole week. She devoted that time to grief, to the memory of her only encounter with a sensitive soul who died without knowing who he was and what he wanted from life. Thank you for listening.